Thank you for joining us for another episode of Thank You for You,
where every story matters.
I would definitely say I had days where I was, down and out, and it was kind of a relief to embrace the fact that I'm human, because I remember seeing my therapist at the time, because once my son was diagnosed, I knew I had to see a therapist to help me get through it, because I knew I couldn't get through it alone. And I remember her telling me that, Vanessa, I would be concerned if you didn't have those bad days. So I definitely had days when I was super depressed. I mentioned that I was getting suicidal thoughts that almost felt natural to me in one degree, because it was, I was experiencing like the complete opposite natural order of quote unquote life, what the natural order is supposed to be. So I was kind of like, well, why couldn't it have been me, or why can't I go? So my thoughts were getting pretty dark at certain points. But I did always keep that intention in the back of my mind to not become bitter and be better from the experience as a whole. So I did allow myself those days when I had a bad day. I gave that to myself, because the reality is that I did lose a son.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes you have to allow yourself to cry or to experience the emotions. Sometimes people say, just think positive, be positive. But part of being, a person and experiencing life is to allow yourself to feel the emotions that you are feeling, not just to push them off or cover them up. So.
Right, exactly. And see, I didn't want that, because I knew that when I was younger and I went through the abuse, I didn't face it, right? So then at 25, it hit me like way too hard, 10 times harder probably than had I had the skills and the training, et cetera, to go through those emotions. And I do feel like that's something society doesn't incorporate within us, is to feel the pain and feel the emotions and grieve and be okay with feeling sad. It's a natural emotion to be sad. I mean, if you look at nature is sad sometimes, and so it's interesting that society doesn't really teach us that, but I do think it's a very important part of self-care and self-love, is to give yourself sometimes a little bit of time in your darkness, and looking at it, because you really can't move past it if you're not actually facing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the longer you ignore it, the bigger it grows. And then, like you said, when you do face it, it's like 10, 20, 30 times more difficult than it would have been had you faced it head on.
Right. You might have a breakdown, God forbid, if you wait 30 years to actually look at something that was very painful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it can cause like different health problems. I've known people who therapists have said because they didn't grieve the right way, they develop anxiety or other certain things. So it's just really important for your body, for you to allow it to experience it. So that's
yeah.
So when you were going through, like you said, the emotions with your son being sick, and tell us about like how that led you to finding self-care, and what you did for your self-care, and how did you figure it out?
Sure. I feel like definitely keeping that intention right away when it happened. Right when I found out Kamden was diagnosed, it was like survival mode. Like, okay, here we go. I'm about to go through the hardest thing ever. How can I go through this in the best ability that I can? So my intention to be better from the experience definitely was what carried me through. And then Kamden taught me a lot as well through his strength. That was a big motivator for me, is like finding a bigger purpose to waking up every day, finding a bigger purpose to fight every single day, and to try to make it through the day. And I feel like little by little, by building on that, it allowed me to develop real, true inner strength, and it allowed me to get very intimate with my inner strength. I had to become very raw and real, brutally honest about it. Like, okay, this is what we're facing right now, and it's the hardest thing that I could ever imagine facing. And I'm here with you, and we're going to get through it. So there's a lot of motivational speaking to myself, a lot of encouraging myself, and then with that, I developed deeper practices of self-care, because I realized I needed, even while Kamden was still here, I realized that in order for me to be the best mother that I could be to him with his short bracket of time on earth, I knew that I needed to take care of myself. That's why I was seeing a therapist. That's why I was exercising, because I needed an outlet in order to come home and be in extreme, extreme, extreme circumstances 24/7. You know, I wasn't sleeping all the months of his life. And it's because I had to wake up every 3 hours to feed him through a feeding tube. And I didn't even think about it. It never crossed my mind once that I wasn't getting sleep, because that's how critical the times were. You know, I couldn't think about whether I was sleeping or not. It didn't cross my mind. So with those extreme measures, I knew that I really, really needed to take care of myself. I had to eat, get my nutrients, be at peace, find peace in the middle of, you know, catastrophe, really.
Right.
And so I think that helps. What is it?
I was just saying, yeah, right in the middle of a storm, you got to be, like you said, you have to find your peace.
Yes. Yes. And I think that is what helped me, because to be quite honest, it was probably just as hard or harder after he crossed over and left and passed. It was more of like a fight after the fight. Like, wow, you know, I was so blessed to have those moments with him. And it's like, wow, how do I pick up the pieces of my life now from here? Now that I experienced all that and the extremity of the pain, because there was so much love there. And so that building the inner strength while he was here really helped me dive in deeper with self-care once he passed, and to keep that strength going so I could keep fighting, to really be able to turn the page and move forward in the best way that I could.
So it's like, because you had that momentum going from when he was living, when he passed, that was what helped you keep moving, basically.
Yes. Yes, actually, yes. You know, it was such a moving time in my life. The experience of it all was so huge and massive that, yes, it did really help me to keep going, because it totally shifted everything I've ever even thought of, perceived my life would ever be. So it's like, okay, well, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was gonna say, if you could look back at that time and as a space, and what on the other side of that, before you had Kamden, before, you know, while he was living, what were you like? What was life like then? And then how did it change? What were some of the dramatic changes that occurred from such a big event?
Sure. I'll definitely say I was very, I was dynamic, but I was kind of like, okay, I'll do this. And I was goal oriented, but I was kind of like, blah, blah, blah. You know, life is happening. I didn't have an urgency. I didn't have a really, really big mission. I didn't have a really, really big purpose. Sure, I had lofty goals, but, they were things I talked about, I was working towards little by little. But even earlier on, I was partying, and, I was just kind of living like a normal girl who just didn't have a lot of direction.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'll say. I didn't have a lot of direction, even though I had a few goals in the more recent years. And since Kamden, I have everything, my values have changed to some degree. My spirituality has deepened immensely. My mission has changed and really has been cultivated. through Kamden, now there's like an urgency in my purpose, because I feel like, and this might sound pretty extreme, but it's very honest for me. And I feel like, you know, there's really no point in me living if I don't fulfill my purpose and do what I came here to do. And I feel like at some degree, we all have that burning fire within us, where we know that we have something that only we can do. Napoleon Hill wrote my favorite book called The Law of Success in the 1920s, where he studied the most successful people and figured out their formula. And I love the way he writes, because he says basically what I just said. He's like, you know, there's something only you can do that no one else can do like you, so why wouldn't you do it? And I will say that the whole experience with Kamden, my experience with meeting him and going through all of the extremes of it, not only changed me, and it's still changing me and transforming me, but it really gave me depth to the purpose as to why I feel like I'm here and what I want to contribute and give back to others.
I love how you were able to find, you know, a positive purpose for his life for you, and that's awesome. That's really awesome. I love the way you talk about that. And then, so after, you know, like as you're transforming, like where has it led you to?
Sure. Well, I definitely feel like I'm still transforming a lot, and that's the exciting part, because it's right now I'm in a place where everything is new. I'm definitely in a new chapter. Life is good. It's finally sunnier, you know, and I had to go through the dark times as a grieving mother, and so it's finally like a new page. But I will say that the most exciting part is that I'm no longer a victim of my circumstances, if that makes sense. I feel like I'm at a clean slate right now, where I'm looking at my future and it's wide open. And that's a really beautiful place to be, because I don't feel like I'm victimized by my circumstances. And I feel really in control to some degree of the direction I want to go in and what my focus is and things that are progressing as I'm building forward.
That's powerful. So you with all the work that you were doing with Kamden and after Kamden, I'm sure that like helped build a lot of strength and momentum to get to where you are, like where you said you feel actually in control. So what year did he pass away?
He passed away in 2016, so 2.5 years ago, February. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So, and before even that happened, there was a lot of tragedy. So when you say victim of circumstances, it's not just your son passing, but there were some things like from earlier in your life that are those some of the circumstances that you're referring to as well?
Absolutely. So it totally feels like a rebirthing, because I'm referring to adversity, sexual abuse, the big traumas that I faced literally from my entire previous life up until now. And the beauty about it is that I have my whole life ahead of me. Basically without that, in a sense. Of course, it's a part of my story. However, I am moving forward through a new door and through a new chapter. So that's the exciting part. And as a new person, really, with a new mission and something very powerful to carry me through, which is purpose.
Now, how did you talk to us about like how you got into yoga and which led you into what you're pursuing with healing and I don't know if I'm saying it right, so I'm like
Shamanism.
Yeah.
Take us on that journey.
Sure. Yeah. You know, like I think I was always spiritual at an early age because I didn't have a dad. So when I came home, because I wasn't always told I didn't have a dad, I remember being in first grade, and I had a religion class because I went to private school. And the teacher gave us a book, and it had like a mom, a dad, a boy, and a sister. And I went home, and I was upset, and I'm like, where's my dad? Why don't I have that? And that's when my mom kind of told me, well, you don't have a dad. And I had just learned about God. So I remember really starting a relationship with the higher power, and I was like, all right, well, God, you're my dad. you know. And so from that point on, I was always very spiritual, although I didn't always agree with certain things I heard in the Catholic teachings. But I would have family members or friends tell me like, oh, you're pretty deep, you know. And it's because like at 7, I remember looking at animals and I was like, oh, what were we before? Were we dogs, bears? You know, I somehow believed in reincarnation without anybody teaching me about that. So growing up, like I would just kind of go to like what was curious to me and what caught my curiosity. So if it was like a spiritual book that kind of just made me feel good, I would start reading it. But it wasn't until my early 20s, so when I was 21, I read a book called The Celestine Prophecy, and that really led me along the spiritual journey. And this guy like read my palm for free once, and he was like, you know, you're a shaman. And I was like, what? I didn't even know what that was. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't even bother looking it up, to be quite honest. And I just went on through my life like, oh, la, 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 whatever, being a free spirit, exploring different things. And for me, it was always easy for me to get into like Buddhism and yoga, and because I was so open to like this universal understanding of the universe, basically. And about when I was 25, I faced a lot of my childhood traumas. And that's when I really started a self-love journey where I started to face those things and try to heal them through therapy and yoga. Once I tried it, I fell in love, and then I got certified to teach yoga. And then I went to India to study in the Himalayas, and that was life-changing in itself. It brought me to a lot of self-realization and to a lot of like high self-esteem, because I suffered most of my life with low self-esteem. So it was an opportunity for me to really cultivate this inner awareness of who and what we really are. You know, that we are beings of light and we're infinite, and that we're not these bodies that we think we are and that society tells us we are. So going through that type of growth really strengthened me. But it wasn't until after Kamden that I was just like, wow, like I just really needed relief and comfort, and I needed spiritual healing. I needed a lot, you know, going through something like that. So I started meditating more, and I started doing more practices, and then I started, looking into shamanism and actually following the calling, because I mean, if someone, you know, if you get a calling like that, you just don't want to ignore it, because I've heard stories and I've heard that life will kind of just not make it the easiest for you. And after losing Kamden, in a sense, it's kind of like, well, I don't want to do anything that I'm not supposed to do here, and I only want to do what I'm supposed to do here. Mm-hmm. So really that's why I'm just studying that, to be in service. And that's been life-changing, because I'll go to shamans for healing, and that helps me heal, because I think we all need help. You know, even though I believe we are the healers, I do believe we all need help from each other.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that completely. You mentioned like how urgent it is for you to do what you know you're supposed to do. And I'm finding that people who have had really close encounters or relationships with death, that they live a life where it's almost just fearless. Like, I know what I need to do. I'm going to do it. I'm not going to ask questions. I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to see if so-and-so's down for it. Like, they just go after it and make it happen. Like, it is incredible how, I mean, it's such a sad thing, or something, you know, however their brush with it is, like how it completely transforms them and propels them forward in such a way. It's very interesting.
Wow. No, you just hit a nerve for me. Like, that was just so powerful what you just said, because you're absolutely correct. And I don't think I've ever been able to nail it down to the way you just described it, but I think that's what it is. I think that might be one of the biggest lessons I personally have been gifted with witnessing Kamden's entire life to the point of death. And you just said it so eloquently. You know, you're right. It does, being so intimate and that close to death, you know, and I'll be a little graphic, and I think it's important sometimes to talk about these things, but I witnessed it. You know, I held his dead body in my hands as his mother. So although I was in a state of shock, and when the paramedics and everybody came, you know, one of the doctors or the cops, one of the people, he said, you know, it didn't hit you yet, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. And maybe he's right. Maybe he was right, but there was something very profound about being so close to that, because I literally witnessed life to the point of death. So you're like, wow, this is all of our ending. This is how we're all going to exit. You know, I had a doctor while I had Kamden who was seeing Kamden, and he said, you know, we all have an expiration date. It's just a matter of when.
Mm-hmm.
And putting that lens on it really does wake you up, because we tend to live in a world where we think, oh, we're going to live forever.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's going to happen. Everything's fine. Or,
Yeah.
you know, just grandma's going to go because they're old.
Yeah. I'll do it tomorrow. It's okay. I'll do it later.
Mm-hmm. Put stuff off.
Right.
Yeah. It's just, I think we take more for granted if we haven't had that kind of an experience. And even if it's, you know, like a diagnosis or something where you could possibly have a certain amount of days, even though we all have a certain amount of days, but unless it's like brought personal, I guess people tend to take it for granted. And that's not always, but you know, it's just something I've noticed that I find interesting and kind of cool, but not cool that, you know, that had to happen, but cool like how I just see the personality, like that go, I'm going to live this life and make shit happen, you know, like it's really cool. Mm-hmm. So you grew up Catholic and then now you're on this spiritual path. Wow.
Yes.
This is just fascinating. I love like this, like religion and spirituality. But so did you have like a moment with religion where you were like, this isn't for me? Or did you take it as this is a part of my spiritual growth? Or like, what was it like going from Catholicism to shamanism to like spirituality and
Sure. You know, I'd say I've always been a rebel and very free-spirited, and I'm very grateful for that. I was just like showing gratitude for that today, because it really helps you cultivate a strong mind. And I feel like even growing up in Catholic school, I was so young, and I remember thinking to myself, nope, I don't believe that. Nope, that doesn't sound right to me. Okay, that sounds okay to me, you know? So for me, I just really let my heart lead me. And with letting my heart lead me, it allowed me to have a wide open understanding with an open mind. And I'm very grateful for having an open mind, because it allowed me to be able to witness the source. You know, I think a lot of the more people expose themselves to different religions, and they realize that the basis is the same. You know, they're all, whether it's Jah, Allah, Yahweh, Jesus Christ, you know, they're portraying the same sense of a higher power. And I respect people who follow their lineage that they want to follow, you know, because I think we all have that choice of free will. Mm-hmm. But for me personally, I think I'm too expansive in my mind and too open-minded to limit myself to one religion, when a lot of it to me sounds like they're saying the same thing. Mm-hmm. You know? And so for me, it's always just really important. Mm-hmm.
Did you run into like adversity with your family or people close to you when you started? But I guess you said you were like that your whole life, but did they like try and keep you in a box?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to mention names, but I did have one family member, and it was really hard. It was really hard because it was right in the midst of Kamden being diagnosed. I had a family member come and literally get rid of all my books, my Buddha poster. And it was a portrait that was hundreds of dollars. My books were priceless. You can't put a number on these life-changing books I had. Got rid of all of them and said that, you know, this is tied to him not being able to be healed because I need to follow the Christian way. Wow. You know, it was really a mess, especially because I was in such a vulnerable state. You know, you don't do that to people. You really don't do that. And I don't care what the religion is. Like, those are crossing boundaries.
Yes, definitely.
And, yeah, it's just not okay. So I've definitely had some issues with that.
Yeah, I think we would all have issues with that's so very intrusive and, like, insensitive and crazy. Hold on, I have to get
coming to your personal space like that. But what was it? What was it? Just the palm reader that led you to shamanism, or was it anything else added on to that? And what was that transition like? Finding out more about it, like what ways did you go out to find more about it? And
sure, yeah, it's interesting. Actually, this is all recent in a sense because I was living in LA where Kamden is buried, so I never thought I would leave LA. This time last year, I was dating this crazy African guy, which I mentioned to you guys before, and we ended up leaving LA to go to DC. So a month later, I'm like, okay, he's cute. This is not going to work. I break up with him, and I was like, well, what am I doing here? And I ended up in a mediumship class. So I was learning how to be a medium. Really fascinating stuff. I didn't understand why I was there. And one guy who was in the class said, he's like, you know, you don't realize where you're here yet, but later on it's going to make sense. And while I was doing an exercise with a woman, right before I moved from DC to Boulder, Colorado, she was blindfolded and she starts cracking up when she takes the blindfold off. And I'm like, what's so funny? She goes, and so wait, to backtrack really quickly, before the exercise, I had already decided that because I was moving to Colorado to get a master's degree, I was going to also simultaneously learn shamanism since I did have that calling. So it was just up until a few months ago I decided to pursue it seriously. But so anyway, this lady takes off her blindfold, starts laughing, and I'm like, what's so funny? And she goes, I just did a past life regression. You were a shaman, a man in the West by the mountains, and you felt really burdened because you knew that you had this responsibility over the community of people. Does any of this make sense to you? And at the level of my soul, I just started crying.
Yeah.
At some point, some part of my soul knew what she was talking about. And so, you know, it was very real to me. And once I started it, I moved here. It happened really quickly. I got trained with this really great organization called shamanism.org, where Michael Harner, he was a white American anthropologist, and he studied around Peru and all these countries. And these people, the indigenous people, gave him their secrets because he was able to retrieve the information quickly. So what he did was he studied the commonality among all of them and created a core shamanism. He unfortunately passed away. However, I'm working right now with a lady who's been working with him since the 80s. And she claimed, you know, for me, I do retrieve information quickly, not to toot my own horn in that. And I'm still learning. I have a lot more to learn. I'm doing apprenticeship now. But she did mention that I'm talented in that arena. So, you know, I don't even know what that means because I'm just starting. But I do know that this is an elder who said that. And I do know that I do have a calling. So for me, it's just kind of like, all right, I'm just going to be the vessel, you know, and I realize that that's really where the power is. It's just in being the vessel for it.
Mm-hmm. Are you allowed to talk about like what it means? Is it like being like a high priestess in some spiritual?
Sure. I can talk about it a little bit. Yeah. Oh, that's actually a good term. You know, I was talking to the Indian guru I studied with in India last week, actually, and he was telling me how, because I told him, you know, I tell people I'm a shaman and they laugh at me, and he said that, you know, that word has been very abused. So it's really not the best title. So I'm still trying to maybe think of a different name.
Is it like what people think, like when I say witch, when really like it's not the negative connotation of witch, like there's more to it? Is it similar to that?
Yeah.
The response that you get?
There's a lot more to it, and in the fact that right now it's becoming so popular with ayahuasca, it's really skewing up. It's really messing up. Exactly. You know, I heard that like there's this really good movie to watch on Netflix called The Last Shaman. It's really fascinating, but it's sad because even in Peru and these indigenous places, there's people making it big business. You know, they're taking away from it. They're selling it to the tourists because all the tourists, you know, it's big money now. They're going there for ayahuasca.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and in reality, the way it's been in the olden times is the shaman they never called themselves, they didn't wake up one day and say, I'm going to be a shaman. They had certain gifts, and people in the town and the community would go see them and they would help them. And then the community would call them a shaman. But originally how it would happen is the shaman would have to go through a lot of life tests. They would usually get electrocuted by lightning or have a near-death experience. They had some serious initiation.
Before
and that's usually how. Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, yeah, before they could have that title, they had to go through all that initiation.
Exactly. And so that's originally how it was, and it usually wasn't for money. It was usually for trade before money was a big, you know, incorporated. And so nowadays, like there are people today who can study and they can be called shamanic practitioners. So you can actually be trained, and the training that I did, it's very practical. And so although the indigenous ones use ayahuasca, and you can use a lot of plant medicines, which I do want to study because I do feel that there are a lot of benefits in plant medicines as opposed to opioids and the pharmaceutical crisis we're going through now.
Right.
Aside from that, there's drumming methods where it takes your brain waves to a theta state, which is the state right before you fall asleep, where you can actually retrieve information, the same guidance, and travel to the underworld and the upper world and retrieve information. And so that's what I was trained to do up until this point. And that's where I get the information. And it's very practical. Again, so many shamans report going to these worlds, whether on ayahuasca or not, whether through drumming, whatever method. And then you do have power animals and power helpers on the other side, on the spirit side, that really do the work. They're connected to the universal power, and the shaman is really just the vessel.
This is so intriguing. So the beta wave, though, can you tap into that through like meditation and stuff too? I know there's different wave states that you can get to in meditation. Is beta one of?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's so fascinating because like I'm really passionate about the when I was in the mediumship class, I could not believe how we were retrieving the information. It was through our imagination. So you'll think it's just your imagination that's giving you, let's say you all of a sudden have an idea, right? And you don't know where that idea came from. You think it's your imagination and you might disregard it, but really it's like spirit guides, your helpers working on the other side, guiding you for your next steps you need to take to fulfill your purpose. And so that's literally how mediums retrieve their information, is through their imagination. They'll get into that meditative state, and things will just start popping up in their minds. And a normal, practical, logical person will say, "Oh, that's your imagination." But someone like Einstein, who emphasized the imagination, and who studies the expansiveness of it, understands that no, that's actually information that you're retrieving for the goodness of your life.
Yeah, I've read about him really going in about imagination, and I'm kind of curious because I just have this like I have this whole side of me that's like everything's a conspiracy, but like I'm wondering if he referred to it as imagination when he originally wrote or was discussing it or was calling it intuition or spirit or whatever, and like the commercial side of like writing or like changed it into imagination. But the way he talked about it, I knew he was talking about like intuition or like something deeper than just imagination. So it's really funny that you mentioned that. But I really think I kind of tie imagination, well, quote unquote imagination, and intuition, like the ideas that you get. Some people see it, some people feel it, some people hear it, whatever. But like the things that come to you are for a reason. And then Whitney and I talk about this sometimes, like when you start acting on that, the things that you create, and like, you're being guided, but it's first starting to hear that. So with mediumship, is that something that can be taught? Like, could I go take a course and like I could really learn that, or does it have to be something that like is
gifted?
Absolutely. See, I'm just so like, it bothers me that society doesn't teach us this. Every single person has, because we all have intuition, we all have psychic abilities. So absolutely, and I feel like the more open-minded you are, the easier it'll come. Like the way you just explained imagination, that's all you need, literally. And you take a class and they'll tell you what else to do. But if you have that in the back of your mind, you'll pick up so much information. You'll literally you'll be doing mediumship, literally. It'll blow your mind. I remember doing it for this girl, and I was getting an image of a guy, and I was like, I wasn't really sure, but I was just telling her what was coming up. And I'm like, yeah, he had a bigger belly. He talked like this. She's like listening. And I said one other thing, and she goes, oh my God, that's my uncle, and he was just murdered in December.
Oh.
And, you'll think it's your imagination, but that's the key. And it's crazy because I was in class with some people who really wanted to be mediums, and they got in their own way because they're trying to figure it out. How do I do this? Or I've got to figure it out. And that's really not the thing. It's really just getting into a meditative, calm mental space. And whatever comes to your mind, you'll think it's your imagination, but that's really what it is. And that's how you learn.
I love that.
Yeah, and so with everything that you're learning, like, tell us what are your goals to do with it? Like, you know, what do you want to do with your shamanism?
Absolutely.
Please just say that word one more time so I can just have intertechnique.
No. You know, and I was wondering, because like you said, when you tell people that, I can't imagine that, but you know, like you said, they're physically laughing at you. Like, do you think you will take your yoga mentor's advice and like change the name of it? Or because I was like, when you said that, I'm like, oh, he has a valid point. I like how he thinks, to say, hey, take your gift, use it, but don't let it have what negative connotation it does have, which I didn't even know it had negative connotation, but I can see that now.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I'm really, I'm still debating. Like, I loved how she said high priestess. I wish it was accept, because they might laugh at that too, you know? So I'm debating, brainstorming at the moment if I'll change the title to like teacher or healer. But I definitely want to take this full throttle, like with everything else in my life that I'm building right now. I really feel like I'm building an empire, and like little by little, I'm just building the pillars slowly. Mm-hmm. But with shamanism, I want to do ceremonies. I just went to my first cacao ceremony last week, and I learned and experienced so much. And these indigenous people, they go and work on the fields to grab and gather the cacao and ferment it, etc., all day long, harvest it, and they take it on a daily basis. But it's amazing what it does, because it really opens your heart and it really grounds you. So I almost feel like the world would be a better place if everybody was taking cacao, honestly, because I saw how it really joins people together in community, which I think is a big answer for the global socioeconomic crisis we're in right now, is community and coming together and sharing. And there becomes a reduced sense of lack, a reduced sense of fear, because if everybody comes together and they're bringing their goods together, then there's abundance and there's more peace. There's just community. And in the word community, I'm just learning all this now, but there's commune and unity. But I'm definitely finding a lot of benefits with plant medicines and ceremonies and coming together. So I definitely want to go that route, which is why I want to study the ayahuasca in Peru, God willing, next summer. And really just let the spirit lead me with clients. So I've just been praying for, whoever needs me, to let them come find me and have that be taken care of on that end from the spirit side.
Mm-hmm. Is cacao the same? You're talking about the natural, the natural substance that people use as a chocolate replacement. I mean, I know it was more. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Powder. But we did do it with a tobacco plant, a very strong tobacco plant that we had to put on our gums first. Mm-hmm. But for these people, they consider it medicine, and it's done in a very entheogenic way, which is a new word that I'm discovering, which is an altered state of consciousness, but for spiritual attainment. So it's all done with intention and relating to the plant and for a higher purpose, as opposed to just altered state of consciousness.
So is it a stronger version of the cacao they sell in stores, or because they're doing it with tobacco, there's a kind of high involved in it, or what's the difference?
Yeah, it is stronger. It is stronger, and they got it directly from Colombia.
Okay, because I'm like, my cacao has never done this for me, but I'm going to go try it. But if it's a different grade.
I know. I wish they sold it in stores, because it would just be amazing if people could take it. A scoop every day or something. They'll just have open hearts and people would be more vulnerable. But I think that's something else. And we were talking about this last time a little bit, is the feminine side, mm-hmm. Just allows people to be vulnerable and finding strength in that and courage and embracing the feminine side more.
Yeah, I think that's a great transition into maybe that, but talking about the feminine side. So I see the masculine and the feminine as energies, not the physical version of it. Because I see it obviously physically, I see it, but the way that I just interpret it in myself, the physical body and the things in the physical are masculine. And then our internal lives, our emotions, our creativity, our thoughts, all that is the feminine. That's how I interpret masculine and feminine.
Yes.
How do you interpret it?
Very, very, very similar to you, to be quite honest. I feel like because I'm at this program at my school, it's so interesting to me that I'm becoming very passionate about politics, because like you, my whole life I was all about everything's a conspiracy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I never cared about politics or the economy because it's all conspiracy to me.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyway, now that I'm in this leadership program and now that I've experienced death, I am just like, oh my God, the generation is about to die, the older ones. We're next. You know, what are we going to do? Look at the state we're in. And I feel like a lot of the reason why we're in the state we're in is because it's so much masculine. And I'm not saying masculine is bad. And I think we needed the masculine to build, like you said, it's all physical, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like we needed the masculine to build our economy to what it is, right? We've built a lot. That's great. Awesome. However, if you put too much masculine energy in it, becomes too much ego, too much power tripping. And hence, look at the situation we're in now. Being in such a patriarchic economy. So I do feel like what the world needs more of is us tapping into those qualities that you were mentioning. And I don't think it means that it's flamboyant for men to tap into those.
Right.
I think it's actually strengthening, you know, for them to tap into their intuition, their creativity. It'll make them more powerful. In India, there's a Sanskrit word called Shakti. And the men, they focus on this. And Shakti means divine feminine life force energy. And so the feminine is literally life force energy. Now that's powerful, you know? And I think our society has been taught to think of strength as only masculine and action and physical, when we need to switch it over to more of a feministic approach where we're looking at action in a more feminine way, where it's life force and it's abundance and it's creativity and creation, in order to restore Mother Earth and bring her back to balance, because it's so off balance right now.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah, me too.
I think in the Indian tradition, I'm not sure which one it is, and I don't want to lie to people. I may have just said Indian for some reason, but in some spiritual practice, there's a belief like that they're androgynous people in their not towns, but whatever, like in their whatever in their culture, were like some of the most powerful people. But then I again don't attribute that to like how someone looks, but like that means that they were able to tap into the masculine and feminine in a balanced way. Like I know when you say androgynous, people probably thinking of an image of us, like what they think androgynous, but I interpret it, and I could be wrong, but as I interpreted it, it was like they were just had a really strong balance of pulling both those energies. Yeah.
Yeah. I believe it. I believe it 100%.
And I totally believe there's women, and I'm sure men who do both. I'm just saying, like single moms or like family members who are single moms, and you see them can build up, and they, you know, build up their whole family and grandkids and stuff, and they had to have both energies to do that.
Well, we all have both energies. The way I interpret it is we all have both energies. Like if you think of something, if you have thoughts in your mind and you have emotions in your body and you have an imagination, if you have intuition, and then you create something in the physical world, draw a picture, draw a line. If you are a physical being, then you've tapped into the masculine. Like, so we're all masculine and feminine. We're all acting on it every day. But I think where the imbalance in society is where it's, don't listen to your heart, listen to your mind, like just take action, like just do this, and like grind all day instead of like allowing yourself to repair, allowing yourself to go into the feminine and actually rest and actually like tap into the other side and meditate.
Or listen to your heart.
Right, yeah.
Or things like that.
Yeah.
Or even cry. You know, like cry, feel things, feel emotions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because like it doesn't serve anybody when you hold them in. I feel so much compassion for men sometimes. Like no wonder they don't have a long life expectancy.
Right.
You know, because you see like their sadness sometimes, and it's just bottled up, and they don't have that outlet.
And they feel like they can't tell anybody, even some of their best friends and stuff. They feel like they have to hold on to it, and it doesn't have to be that way at all.
Right.
There's something on Netflix, and it's called Boys or Men or something like that. And I watched the first like 20, 30 minutes of it, and it was like men actually talking about growing up and how they were taught how to be a man. And some of them were talking about like, you know, I had a good strong 1 or 2 cries growing up, and I was told immediately by my mother or a teacher or a coach or my dad, like, none more of that. Like, you don't cry, you hold that in, you don't show that. And just like little things like that taught them throughout their lives, like not to show emotion, not to be quote unquote a girl, not to be like, they were talking about these little things. And I was like, whoa, I didn't even know that happened. But
I've had to stop my husband from saying stuff like that to my son, who's
like, don't cry.
Yeah, you'd be like, stop, you know what you doing? Don't cry. Oh, why are you crying? And I'm like, no, he can cry. Do not tell him that. He can cry. Like, I have
to you.
Yeah, I like shut. It makes me so. I'm like, no. Like, I want him to be able to be emotional, you know, and to be upset and to say what.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, one of my favorite hashtags on Instagram is Black Boy Joy. I just love that hashtag. And it's all pictures of like normal things that, you know, that you don't usually see Black men doing because of society, you know, like hugging and talking and dancing, you know, in a more open way. And whenever I see that, I'm like, no, that's what I want my son to be able to do. I don't want to have to I don't want him to learn a certain thing, and then later you have to like pull it from him, like peel that off.
Right, go through all that healing process because you've learned not to be yourself. Yeah,
right. And my husband's just doing what he was taught.
Right, right.
And it's just like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. No, you know, he can have a moment and cry about it. It's totally okay. Because I love those moments. You know what I mean? Like, just give me a few minutes and to cry it out, and I'll be okay. Like, I'm totally fine. I just need a good cry.
I think that's a great example, as Vanessa was talking about in our first call, when it was like our generation needs to step up for the kids coming in and create a safe space for them to exist in their authentic forms, where it took us like 20, 30, maybe a little longer than 30 years for us to even get to a point where we can like feel some twinge of authenticity, and like that it's okay to not follow some structures that are in place. But I think that's really great that you're allowing your son to just that's so dope.
I agree.
Yeah, just pass him freedom on.
Yeah. Yes, for sure.
And I think too, because I remember a seminar I was in college. I was kind of talking about the way I was raised, and an older lady that was in there, she said that's what they had to do back then. She was like, they had to think that way. They had to be protected because of the things that they were going through, just oppression for Black people during civil rights. And I think, you know, like, that's kind of what I'm doing with him. Like, maybe, I don't know, hey, we're getting to the point where you don't have to be this way, and so I'm not going to raise you that way. Like, whatever made men think that they had to be hard like that, you know, we're past that now.
Oh, you mean like the roles, the male-female roles were...
Well, no, well, she survival? Was... Me and her, I was telling to her about... It was a class about, like, race relations and civil rights, and we were all talking about different ways we were raised and how we were, you know, taught to think or say, or how we were taught to view other races. And she was just saying from her perspective, she was maybe 2 generations older than me. She said back then that was our life, like that was our everyday, you know, growing up in segregated schools and being attacked. So of course we pass on to our kids, but we think they need to be protected. You know what I mean? But then now, you know, even though things are better but not great, but now I may not need that protection. I may be able to grow up in a integrated school and not have the same things that a parent would have taught their kids then. And I'm saying, and that's the kind of same thing that I want to do with my son. Like maybe whatever it was that men felt like, hey, we have to be closed off. We can't be communicative and show our emotions and, you know, be strong all the time. It's like, hey, we're not there anymore. We're past that. You can do that now. So,
yeah.
That's good. I feel like that'll change a lot, hopefully, with our men. And, like, I remember one time I was at this bar years ago, and I was talking to only guys. There was, like, 5 guys, including the bartenders. And I said something about, like, well, why don't they ever address men and their daddy issues? And the guy, like, they got speechless. One guy's like, well, drop the mic right now. You know, and they didn't even know how to respond, but they responded in their own way, but they didn't even know how to engage in a how to even go further from there.
Yeah, it's always the women and their daddy issues, but you're right. You rarely hear about the other way.
Yeah.
Right, and they're the ones who are the dad. They're the future dad.
Right.
You know, and they really need to address their daddy issues, and they have them just like we do, just as much.
Yes.
Yep. Absolutely. And it's still perpetuated. Like, I was talking to someone earlier today. I was like, where's your son? Where's your son going to be? And she was like, well, my husband's more than capable of watching him. And I was like, well, I didn't want to be offensive, but, you know, like you do have that in society where it's like the dad just doesn't take care of kids sometimes. And I think I just assumed, and that was like the worst thing I could have done. But there was something the other day, and it was like Kevin Hart I guess it was, I hope it was a joke, but he was just saying like something to the effect of him watching his kids, and he hates babysitting his kids or something like that. And I was like, see, that's the mindset. Like, why are you babysitting your kid? Like,
right. Why?
Well, mothers are mothering and actually parenting and being friends and like all the things, but you're babysitting.
Right. And why do you call it that? And
right. There's a huge disconnection in my mind.
And if a mom said that, she would get the
oh my God.
backlash. If she said, I hate having to be around my kids, you would literally be off TV. You know, people would be all over her social media. But a man says it, and they're like, oh, yeah, you know, like, no.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so that daddy issue thing with men is big. Like,
and there's so much healing there that, you know, maybe that'll be something for you, Vanessa, since you thought of it and brought it up. I mean, there's so much healing there that needs to be done for men who have those father issues.
Right.
And some cycles that
need to be broken.
Right. I'm so disheartened that she said that, because it's like these men, they need role models saying better things than that, you know?
And he's such a big star.
Right.
Yeah, that's crazy. What are some of your areas that you're interested in healing in? Like, you know, I'm sure you'll tackle everyone, you know, anyone that you're praying who comes to you with what issue, but do you have like certain areas that you're really interested in healing?
Man, I feel like I've been healing for so many years right now that I don't feel like I'm healed, and like I don't have more, but I don't feel like I have a focused area right now. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Because I feel like right now I'm just such in a rebirthing state of my life right now. Like everything is just rebirthing, transformation. So I guess it's just really like embracing that in my life right now, I guess, is my goal, like for my personal spiritual healing at the moment. But just really letting go of the whole old like trauma, really, as I'm stepping into the rebirthing.
Right.
Yeah. Because I really feel like I have a whole future self ahead of me where I'm not even yet the woman I'm going to be, you know? And so that's really where I'm at.
Yeah, because you mentioned that you're building your empire. And what are the other aspects of your empire? We know you're doing your shamanism, and then you're going back to school for your leadership. What other aspects of your empire are you working on?
Were you asking Whitney earlier what areas of healing are you going to focus on in your business, or Vanessa's going to focus on in her business?
Yeah, and she's
Okay, I misunderstood. Okay, I thought you meant like what areas I was focusing on in myself. Okay, for business, like with healing, I'm gonna do like different areas of shamanism. So that will entail like soul retrieval, which is really interesting. I've had that done to me before. It's basically when you go through trauma, parts of your soul leave because it can't handle it, and when it leaves, it's off healing. So the shaman, it'll bring those pieces back to you and retrieve those pieces. But when it retrieves it back to you, you'll have new gifts. And you'll notice that after a soul retrieval that you'll be integrating these gifts of you. So you'll literally start to feel more whole. Because obviously, and we know this, like as we grow up and like go through adulthood, we'll have moments where we're not as whole as like we felt when we were little, for example, as a child, without anything happening to us yet, right? So that's definitely one area of focus.
What did you say that was called?
Soul retrieval.
Oh, because I've heard someone talk about.
Shaman,
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say every shaman offers that, but what were you saying?
Oh, no, I was going to say I heard someone talk about like when you go through traumas, your personality or parts of you fracture and split off. So I'm wondering if that's similar or what they're meaning.
So. I believe it's tied to that because, I mean, I know from my personal experience of going to a shaman for soul retrieval, I feel like parts of my personality came back.
Oh.
So it's really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
I'll also focus on extraction. So if like someone feels like there's a spirit of, or a dark cloud that they just can't shake off, sometimes they need a little help extracting that and removing that from their body. And then again, plant medicine, I definitely want to focus on that. As far as shamanism goes, and so the interesting thing is, and I can't remember if I told you guys or not, but I was writing a book, and I think I told you, right?
Yeah.
I was writing a book. Yeah, so that's a part of the empire. It's called Believe in Your Soul, and I finished the first draft before Kamden, but then I knew it wasn't finished once I had Kamden because my book was about overcoming things, and I knew that this was going to be the biggest obstacle really that I was going to have to face. And so my book is finishing up and in the process of being edited. So that's a part of it. My YouTube channel, that's been going on for like a few years. It was crazy because like I've been working on that for like 6 years now, maybe 5 years. And I only have 200 subscribers, but like the other day, this lady came and she's like, "Oh, I saw your YouTube." And I was like, "What?" So that was like interesting because it feels like such a long journey, because I remember when I just got 200, I was like, "Oh my," I was really happy because it means the world to me. It's like, man, like, because, 200 and nowadays doesn't seem like a lot, but for it to be going on for 6 years, those 200 mean like the world to me, honestly. Yeah.
I mean, that's so 200 people you're connecting to. Yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah. That's what you're saying too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the biggest one right now is the nonprofit. So that's like pretty exciting, called Kamdens Room, where we basically distribute books to kids to give them the childhood that Kamden didn't have, and 10 minutes of meditation, so that children are taught. Really, the goal of that is so they can learn to love themselves early, but it's so that they can learn the benefits of meditating, like better focus, how to learn how to be calm if they feel anxious, because kids get anxious too. So that's like really, really exciting with the empire that I feel like I'm building. And then I blog. So I'm really busy all the time because I'm working on one or the other. So I'm blogging at the same time. I'm thinking about starting a podcast, probably not going to interview people. I don't know. Probably not. It'll probably just be like me talking. I feel like I have a lot of thoughts to share, and going to this school, being in this program is like bringing out more thoughts. So I'm thinking about sharing it on the podcast maybe, just so I can have an outlet in every direction,
Especially on your journey, everything you're learning and the new things you're trying.
Have that like recorded, yeah.
Yeah, for people who's interested and want, you know, to live through you.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Oh, and then I forgot. I paint sometimes for fun, like for therapy purposes. And my cousin has a line, so she basically showed me how to get my paint on stuff. So that should be coming up soon, like maybe scarves is what I'm looking at doing.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Nice. You're like, I wasn't doing enough, so I thought I'd just, you know, start painting too.
And designing, right?
I'm designing clothes. That's dope.
Right. Full empire.
For real empire.
Love it.
That's awesome.
So what advice would you give to anyone who's trying to be intentional? You know, like being intentional does not come easy like it did for you. You say like you were like, okay, I need to be intentional. But some people just have like they'll just say over and over again, okay, I'm going to do this, but they never get there. And you know, what advice would you give to them if they're listening to this and seeing what a self-starter you are and how you're going for everything? What would you tell them, like, hey, this can help you get here? What would you tell them?
I'd say a couple things. For one, I would definitely say believe in your soul. I feel like once I determined that that would be the title of the book, it really helped me to just, even if I'm starting a hike, right, and I set an intention, and let's say my intention is to get to the top of that hike and make it there. It's going to require, and there's times when it's really hard and I feel like giving up and I trip and I might fall, literally, and I want to turn around, but it's like, no, if I believe in my soul, because the soul has no fear. The soul has no limit. The soul has, it's not weak, right? Your soul is like infinitely strong, and it can literally do anything you put your faith into, believing that it can do. So that's the first thing, is learning and building a relationship so that you can learn to believe in your soul, because there's infinite power there. And two is you know, realizing that and being gentle with yourself and understanding that creating intention is not easy. I struggle with it still. And there's this book called Seed of the Soul by Gary Zukov that Oprah put on. Oprah and Maya Angelou both said it changed their lives. And if I could sum up this whole book into like one sentence, it is always set intentions. Oprah says that it still changes her life till this day because she's constantly setting intentions. So if it's something that you can just start to begin practicing like daily, all throughout the day, like whenever you remember, like, oh, I'm going to set an intention that when I go get this cup of coffee, I'm going to smile. You know, it can be the simplest things, but just by cultivating a habit where you are beginning to put intention will literally transform your life. I mean, as Oprah and Maya Angelou say it, I definitely believe it. And also, really just being your motivator, being your cheerleader, like, and understanding it's okay if you need a day where you don't want to talk to nobody. You know, it's okay if you don't want to leave the house, because right now you can't. So self-care and like constantly asking yourself, what do I need right now to take care of myself? Because that'll look different every day depending on your circumstances. But I do believe that providing those things for yourself will enable you to thrive. It'll enable you to face your challenges better, you know, because you know you're taking care of yourself while doing it. And to understand it's not easy all the time. And that's okay. You know, it's not a fantasy story where it's like rose petal blends. You know, the reality is, if you look at nature, sometimes it's thunderstorming and sometimes it's sunny, and that's a part of life. But it's what I'm finding the beauty about, after going through all this adversity and finally, after fighting and fighting and finally coming over onto the other side, I'm finding that I have a whole future ahead of me, and that I'm not those things that have happened to me. You know, I'm not a victim of those things, and I still have a future that has not happened yet. You know, tomorrow hasn't come yet, and that's the exciting part about life. And also, and I don't want to forget this part, and this is something I'm still working on, but I think it's so important, is to take note of your strength. Take note of how far you have come, because that's your weapon. You know, that's what's gonna show you, like, man, I was able to get through that. I know I can get through this. What? Like, come on, bring it. I got this. And no, that's something nobody can give you, and nobody can take that away from you.
I love that. I love everything you said. That's like the perfect forward for your book.
Right. Can you transcribe this part of the recording? Yeah, that was really good. I love the part at the end about taking note of your strength, because I actually I don't remember what I was watching earlier today, but I made the point, and I said for my birthday, which I call my personal new year, this year, I'm actually going to write down my progress for this year and actually celebrate the things that I've been through. So I love that you just mentioned that. But I've never done that before, and I never thought to. And I don't think we're taught to celebrate ourselves, but that usually means like get drunk, get messed up, like have a party. But
right.
To celebrate yourself and think about all the things you've been through and come through, and like how you change and transition. It's like, I think there's a lot of power in that.
So much.
That.
That's what I love to use it to encourage people that I know who get disencouraged, like my friends or people that I work close with. And I'm like, do you remember when you went through this? And like sometimes you forget what you went through and how hard it was, and like look at you now, you come through this, and like, what is this new thing? Like you totally have this. Like, let's not trip. Like take time, get a second, but like let's remember how strong you are. Let's not forget about the stuff that you've been through before. You should be able to beat this down. Like you should be like, okay, got this. Like I'm gonna press through, because let me remember how strong I am.
And the lessons that you learned while you were going through it. Like, not just that you went through it, but like what wisdom did you gain, and what power, like what tools for your toolkit in life, like did you learn from that like shitty situation, or like whatever you went through. Like, oh, I did learn like yoga, meditation, deep breathing, whatever it was, or patience. But like noting what superpower you obtained. Yeah.
Are you asking or no?
No, she was just saying like, yeah.
Wait, I missed all that.
I was just want to be like, wait, Vanessa, what superpowers are you saying you have? Superpower strength. Definitely.
Yeah.
Inner strength.
For sure.
I feel like we all have them.
Yeah. So many.
But that's when you say stuff like that, that's when my like conspiracy side comes out, and it's like, yeah, we all have them, but they were stripped away from us when we were younger and sent through our training camps of school and not allowed to continue
a whole
be ourselves.
Story.
Yeah, I was just gonna go in, but
I heard they're building more schools, like better schools, supposedly, like with more like meditation practices and like self-love practices. I really hope that's true.
I'm down for that. I have seen an influx of meditation in younger kids lately. Like, okay, I mean, let me keep it real. I saw it on some Facebook videos. I don't know if that's a real thing, but like I've seen it in some instances. They are starting to implement meditation with children, but that would be really cool if that was actually happening.
Yeah, I saw one counselor at an elementary school is using it for her kids who get in detention, but instead of going detention, it's literally meditation. So they come in there, they go through meditation exercises, they go through yoga, because she's like, most of these kids just have things that they're going through and don't have a release for it. Instead of just punishing them, saying, like, come sit in detention for an hour after school, we're going to use this as a chance to meditate and for them to learn different ways to like channel their emotions. I'm like, that is so cool. I love that woman. Yeah.
I like that, but I think I have mixed feelings about it, because if it's a replacement of detention, do the kids still think that they're going to detention, or do they think like, oh, I'm in trouble, so now I have to go meditate? Or are they thinking, let me go like work some things out or figure something, like, I don't know how.
Yeah, well, it's elementary school too, so it's only up to like 7. But if somebody's getting in trouble just to go to meditation, then they definitely need it.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, are they seeing it, like, is that being conditioned in their mind, like, if you're bad, then you go to meditate type of thing? Yeah.
Associating it, yeah.
Right. Yeah, that word.
Yeah. I don't know. I just know she's like, let's just try to turn this.
I mean, I like it, though. Yeah. I think I like it. But, you know, I just take everything to, like, all these other different levels. It's progressive, and it's a step forward, so I will accept.
Yeah, like, it's better than them sitting there looking at a wall and being more upset, or not even. Because when you're that young, you're getting in trouble like that. It really is time for someone to say, "Hey, what's going on?" Like,
and you might not
have a different outlet.
Yeah,
you know. So 4 through 7. Because my aunt's an elementary school teacher, and last year she had kindergartens, and some of them she talked about how they had a lot of behavior issues, but it was really what was going on at home, showing up like a 5-year-old, you know. So she took a lot of time working on each one and her own personal time, because she just felt like they're too young to just say, "Hey, go stand against the wall," or, you know. How do you give a kindergarten F in behavior, but you're not trying to, like, fix it and see what's going on and what can be changed? So
that's how it's been, though, right? Like, you just...
Yeah, and that's what she's saying she doesn't want to do. And if her school doesn't support her,
I was like, what happened? But yeah, that's a good idea. I like some of the transitions we're making. It's good. Mm-hmm. And Vanessa's Empire will clearly, like, you know, be at forefront of some of these things. Like, you're bringing meditation to schools, right? Like, that's part of Kamdens Room.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean,
little by little,
you'll be implementing that. Oh, and Whitney, you weren't on the phone, but Vanessa said, like, they're going to do a big haul of books and going to schools in India next year. Did you say next year?
Next semester, spring semester. So in spring, like 2019.
That's awesome.
Right?
Already
like
international.
That's pretty huge.
Yeah, affecting the world.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I hope everything goes great and the kids are happy. You know, really.
They will.
And hopefully it brings the community together too. While we do this fundraising event, I'm excited to see how that turns out and, like, how the community supports this initiative.
The community in Boulder, or in Colorado, or when you go to India?
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
In Boulder, Colorado, yeah.
Have you experienced much of that? Right, yeah, they're probably more progressive on the community front. What kind of experience have you had with the spiritual, or, like, I don't know, part of the community in Colorado in general?
Well, sure. It's very, Colorado's very white, and it really breaks my heart that it's not more diverse, because it's literally, like, the most beautiful state I've ever seen. Excuse me. But, and you know, like, I understand they've had, like, apparently, a lot of Ku Klux Klan ran Colorado back in the day, and they were very highly in government here, so they were able to create a lot of amendments and perimeters for people of color not being allowed, you know, in certain areas, most of the areas of the entire state, really. So that has been a very interesting experience for me, because although I did go to private school with predominantly white people, I lived in Miami, so Miami's very mixed.
Mm-hmm.
And I only had 1 or 2 interesting encounters. I don't want to go too into detail, but long story short, I was at one meetup gathering, and there was a woman of color, and then this white lady was saying, I don't know, what did she say? Oh, she said, you know, because she communicates with animals, which was her profession, and she was describing how it is to be an animal communicator. So she said, you know, they don't like each other sometimes, how Mexicans don't like each other, and how people of color are weaker. So then the lady in front of her, looked at the sky, like, wait a minute, did I just hear this?
The visual I just got of that, like, we all have seen that person do that.
Oh my goodness. Sure enough, she goes, "Wait, what did you just say?" And then the white lady says, everybody knows that, right? Darker people are weaker. Everybody knows that. And then the black lady says, "No, I've only been in Boulder for 3 months. I'm from Chicago, Illinois. I have my own TV channel, and I've never experienced so much racism in my life." And the woman said her only response was, "Well, I hope we were founded by the Klan."
Wow.
And it was definitely in a very connotative way where it was kind of like
a warning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's like,
exactly. There was definitely an underline there. Definitely an underline there. Like, honey, we're still here. Like, don't get it twisted.
Wow.
So that was one encounter. And then the other encounter I had, I thought was very bizarre, and it really affected me because I've never experienced anything like this. So I was in Walmart at the checkout aisle where you do your own self-checkout. So the guy next to me, he's this older white man with his wife, and he's already doing the most to cover up the whole pin pad. Mind you, my shoulder's facing him. I'm not even looking at his pin pad. He has his big hand covering it. So I'm like, okay, whatever. He's doing the most. Anyway, so as soon as he moved from the pin dial to putting his items into the bag, I move over to start scanning my items. He muffles in a very low tone. He goes, you gotta hold on a minute. So then I paused because it took me a minute to register. Like, is this? I know he's not talking to me. So then I look at him.
Right.
I look at him and I go, "You're not talking to me, right?" Because I'm really confused. And he goes, "Yeah." I said you need to hold on a minute. And that's when I started getting upset. Like, I didn't go off or anything, but I started like kind of talking to him and myself, and I'm like, "No, why? This is my space." Like, you know what I mean? Anyway, because it really upset me because I've never experienced anything like that. And it definitely felt like it was coming from a very ignorant, racist place.
So he was wanting you to wait to put your stuff on the belt until he was like completely dead or something? Gone or something?
Exactly. It has to be. But there's boundaries. I mean, it's pretty clear where the boundaries are. Like, there's a scanning section, there's a bagging section.
Right.
He didn't want you close to him at all, sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. He didn't want me to scan while he was bagging his items. He said I needed to hold on a minute.
Wow.
So Boulder is very vanilla, and they say, Boulder is very liberal, so they say, because everyone's like environmental conscious. They like working out here. They have the Rocky Mountains, but it is very, very vanilla to the point where there is less than 1% people of color. Of Black people. And Denver has 4%, so it's drastically different, even though that number sounds small. It's a big difference than Boulder. And they don't even count Hispanics because that is how little diversity they have here. They're not even counted.
Well, there's some perspective.
Right, that is stupid if I ever heard.
So I guess maybe when they say progressive, they mean like progressive compared to other parts of this state.
Exactly. And then Boulder's very affluent too. Like, so the house market here, every house literally costs $1 million or more. Mm-hmm. So maybe they mean progressive in that way. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely not like the U.S. standard of progressive.
Right, exactly. Patriarchy. But the spiritual scene is pretty big here. It seems like there's a lot of people holding ceremonies, and that's one of my concerns is like, how do I find the right people? And people who, when I was talking to the Indian guru last week, he said, you don't want to go somewhere where the person conducting the ceremony is at a lower frequency than you. Mm-hmm. Which makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was just something for me to think about because it's becoming very popular these days. Is like, even if it's not ayahuasca,
right?
Yeah, ceremony and plants, and, So they're open. It's just finding the right people.
Mm-hmm. That unfortunately sounds like a trial and error finding. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh no! Hold up. Y'all are like this. Just set the intention. and,
right.
It'll come. It'll meet the right people. It'll be easy. It'll be a breeze. will speak that.
Right. They'll come to her.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I really love it. I mean, the mountains are just so beautiful here. Just the scenery. I really wish more Black people were here, because it's like I want my people to see how beautiful our country is and parts of our land, you know.
Oh, wow. I love that facet of your company, of your empire that you're speaking into existence. You're going to have retreats in Colorado. Cool. I'll sign up.
Exactly.
You know, we'll come if it's a group and we're like, feel safe. And then we'll be like, oh, wait, I'll move here.
I'm going to hold that to you guys.
I definitely would come. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, they have these hot springs here. It's like phenomenal.
Oh
That's
my
a great
gosh,
getaway.
I love hot springs.
Yeah, that sounds so good. I've been to the ones in Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you just let us know and we'll just sign up for the retreat in Colorado. I mean, I don't know if I'll go to Walmart.
Okay.
Right. I don't know if I'm going to leave the retreat. I'm just joking. We're
we're I'm from the South. I grew up in Indiana where the KKK was created. I'm not afraid. I'm used to that.
Right.
Life, so I will go to Colorado and be just fine.
They'll just move on up.
You'll be fine.
For sure. Absolutely.
We'll have no problems.
Right.
Well, cool. This was an amazing conversation. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Like, thank you so much. You've shared so much wisdom, and I loved like all the tips and hints that you've given. They're like really unique to your situation, and like a lot of them were like aha moments to me personally. So I really appreciate you taking time, sharing your story, being you, and yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, ladies. I really enjoyed it, and you definitely gave me some aha moments. So I was like, okay, wow, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. So thank you, guys. I'm glad it worked out, and I'm glad, like, I feel like we made some kind of magic happen tonight.
Absolutely. I agree.
We definitely want to keep in touch to see.
We're going to Colorado.
Everything that you. Right.
No, but yeah, for sure.
Be there in the summer.
Right.
It's the vanilla. My problem is it's the
cold.
No, that vanilla, yeah.
The vanilla snow.
Yeah, that's good. Summer's great.
My like, okay, girl, I'll see you there.
If you enjoyed this week's podcast, please help us spread this story by
subscribing however you're listening, rating this podcast, and commenting and following on our social media.
And thank you for you.